it's a daily conscious effort to, you know, to control and manage your vibrational state. And you have moments where, like, man, I've really, I think all of our journeys it's a journey of 2 step forward, 1 step back. In some way, you make great progress, and then you see these parts of yourself that need further clarification and integration and transmutation. And
welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. Another magical day in the office of the ethereal plane. I want to welcome to the podcast today Brandon Beachum, a conscious creator, a conscious seeker. He's also a podcaster and has had a incredible lineup of conscious creators throughout his so far his tenure within social media and the web. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I always welcome these conversations to expand the very knowing of who the individual is. Just with a few words that we share could enlighten someone to take a whole different direction in their reality.
Yeah, that is the dangling carrot, isn't it? I remember having Charles Eisenstein on Positive Head podcast, my show years back, and one of the things he talked about was, who is more important, Gandhi or Gandhi's grandmother, who supposedly raised him. And so, like, the idea there being she influenced one person, but that one person influenced how many, right? And so, you never know. You could be at the coffee shop, and that one word or moment could have the ripple of impact beyond you and I's, grinding away at podcasting and talking until, people's ears bleed. You never know. You never know. So
I would love you to share with the audience a little bit, Brandon, about yourself leading up to this very moment.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Well, I grew up on the East Coast in Virginia, actually. And I was raised in a very conservative Christian household with a bunch of siblings that looked very similar to you, a lot of gingers. I was the non-ginger of the three of us, and very conservative Christian household. My father got very religious when I was around 11 or 12, and I'd always went to church with my grandmother every Sunday up until that point. And then it became like, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I went to a Christian college. I was ultimately a very conservative Christian college in Tennessee. I ultimately got kicked out because I was a bad kid, quote unquote normal, but just, breaking the rules. And so, soon thereafter, I moved to a bigger town in Tennessee, Nashville. And that's where I met a woman who claimed to have some psychic or intuitive abilities. And that was intriguing to me. I hadn't come across that, at that point in my journey. And then she did some things that indicated that there may be some validity to her claims. And that was really intriguing. And, that really opened me up to exploring and started to read books and things like that, on metaphysics, things like Conversations with God. This is mid-90s. And I remember, one thing that was really, I had a series of, let's say, spiritual breadcrumbs, synchronicities that happened that really helped to confirm, serendipities that helped to confirm. As I was reading this stuff, I can only think, because it's my dharmic path to do the work that we do, that it was instantly like, oh my gosh, of course I'm one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things. What else could it be? Like, it was just like that aha, that remembering, coming back together with other parts of myself and, intellectually speaking, so to speak. And, I remember sharing with my brother all the things I was learning and reading about. And one of the first books I had was on out-of-body experiences and astral projection. And in the book, it was like, oh, you can do this through, here's some meditation techniques of how to achieve an out-of-body state, or you can become lucid in your dream state. And then when you become awake in the dream, essentially lucid dreaming, you can say, oh, I'm actually laying in bed here and I remember that. And now I want to leave my body, and you can pop out. So I was sharing with my brother all these things that I was starting to tap into. And he was still, he's a couple years younger and still kind of aligned with what we had been raised to believe, more or less, this sort of conservative, dogmatic Christian perspective. And he was like, Brandon, I don't know what how many mushrooms you've eaten, or what if you think this is real, that you can leave your body, I think you're crazy. I think you've lost your mind. But that lucid dreaming thing you're talking about is something that I used to do as a kid. I remember becoming awake in my dream and, taking control of the dream. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, if it ever happens again, say I want to leave my body and see what happens. Well, us talking about it that day triggered it happening to him that night. Him going into a lucid state. He remembered our conversation, of course, because he's lucid. He says, I want to leave my body. Next thing you know, boom, he pops out. He's looking at himself laying in bed. He's hand in front of his face, pure energy. And, he was never the first guy in line for the roller coaster. So it freaked him out a bit. He went from one day making fun of me to the next day, like looking like he'd seen a ghost and being like, oh my gosh, Brandon, I just popped out of my body. You were right. So that was a cool, confirmation at the time. Like, okay, there's more, there's definitely something to all this, And so I just kind of continued on the journey, and then it became, I don't know if obsession is the word, but the thing that lit me up the most, like I said, I think because it's my dharmic path, I would if you listen to episode 1 of the Positive Head podcast back in 2015, you'll hear me say, I had to do this so my poor friends and family's ears could stop bleeding, hearing me wax poetic about the ultimate nature of reality. And so let me get in some new ears, And so that's kind of, it just kind of went from there. I would, for all those years, it's like talk to anyone who'd listen about it and continued to read and study. And, really it's a journey of, you can understand a lot of these concepts in a moment, but implementing them and applying them in your life is a daily conscious effort. I mean, as Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face. And life punches you in the face enough to say, oh my gosh, what, so much for my spirituality that just went out the window, and even yesterday I navigated a situation where I was like, oh, there's that agitated temper that I've worked so hard on coming up and taking over again, and me not being my highest and best, So that's really then becomes the dance, is like, understanding that, life is going to give you what you need to sharpen your axe. And so it's been a lot of that in my life, and serial entrepreneur along the way, and had some very interesting experiences with, going from a friend's couch to, okay, I can manifest, anything, and then manifesting a, Inc. fastest growing private company and 100+ employees, then losing it all in dramatic fashion, getting offered to be bought out for $30 million and then losing 90% of our revenue within 12 hours of that and blowing the whole deal up. And so I've, it's been quite a journey of learning and discovering myself.
Oh my goodness, the technical difficulty, not that you probably get this often, not consciously, but I tend to blow out Wi-Fi quite a lot, and when I merge with people that are oscillating in similar resonance, things become problematic. So
I think you just called me a spaz, but yeah.
Well, this is another register. If you're on your seeking journey of realization, self-evidence of, hey, the second I get amplified, the second I get into that space of knowing, yep. Holy shit, I just blew something out.
Holy shift.
So we left you at the last part where you were sharing this with your family. You had your brother's own admission of out-of-body experience, and then you looked to the podcast to help keep yourself in a space where there's more people validating this knowing that you're having. And then, of course, you went over the humanistic simplicity of human condition, which is what we call within Taoism the distraction, more of a Buddhist path, the dukkha, and then you get a little bit off kilter, and that's just you getting a taste of different frequencies that distract you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's it really is. I had a girlfriend years ago say it, and it stuck with me. She's like, it's a daily conscious effort to, to control and manage your vibrational state. And you have moments where, like, man, I've really, I think all of our journeys it's a journey of 2 step forward, 1 step back. In some way, you make great progress, and then you see these parts of yourself that need further clarification and integration and transmutation. And so yeah, it has definitely not been a dull journey in any way, shape, or form. And now I currently live in co-living in event space in the Los Angeles area. We call Mystic Manor, where we host regular kind of gatherings, kind of a hub for conscious community in LA. So yeah, doing those events and bringing people together, giving people the opportunity to come together and in real life. So that's something that is a big part of my journey currently. And so, yeah.
So you've really had a taste of many things. I mean, I've watched the realization of, the human timeline, being involved in esoteric internal alchemy practices, teaching people these things for over 30 years, ordained in 2 lineages of Taoism.
Wow.
And
Cool.
Basically, I've been sharing these mystical practices that were not potential, but just a myth to many people, to teach them how to get into the deeper nature of the electromagnetic spectrum within this realm. And so then you tap into things that are what we call the mother, which is the center point, the Wu Ji, the stillness, and that is the entry level to the mother, the Tao.
Did you say Muji or Wuji?
Wu Ji. That's okay. And so Wu Ji is between the breath in and the breath out. And when you realize that, it's so interesting when you speak on your own journey within Taoism, we explain it very clearly that it is the expression of the mother is a bellows. You are all things and nothing at the same time. You are contracting and expanding at the same time. Yeah. Man is not like that. And so when you identify with the body, the flesh, the reflection that looks back at you in the mirror as your personality, you will be limited. You will be exhausted. You will be distracted. Yeah. And so the deeper nature of the energetic profiles and the properties are so critical. And we say critical, I say it's definitely the value system that's very important if you want to identify what it is you're experiencing. So within Nigong, internal power, that I teach people, the Nidan, the internal alchemy, we have a very, very, very concrete model that we've been teaching for thousands of years, handing down from generation to generation. So it's not, you have a sample, you have the what we call the glimpse, the sip of the mystical dragon, and you're chasing it. Yeah. And this is where people go, I saw an apparition. I listened to my loved ones. I had this prediction. It came true. I had this out-of-body experience. And the chill that you're getting right now is that realization that you're having. Yeah. And people are like, hang on a second. How do you even know that? Well, I see the aura first, and then I experience it if I choose to. And so these are all just clear senses of what we put under sensory perception. So they're developmental skills. They're methods that are repeatable and trainable. Yeah. And that's why I always recommend for people to have a method of cultivation that can be validated and self-realized. So the most important thing of a Taoist path is this self-realization. It's almost kind of parallel to a Gnostic realization. It's self-evident. And the highest level of ascension is direct source information. Now, how that degree of development comes from the physical body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, the sun body, the moon body, the earth body, and then finally the oneness body, the ultimate, and then being with all things, which is direct source, which spiritual new age would be Akashic record, halls of a mente, a realization, but it's channeling. It's direct source channeling. And I mean, I've been teaching people channeling, mediumship, clairvoyance, internal alchemy for 30 years now.
Cool.
And so the mediumship, the channeling is something that I realized. I remembered who I was almost instantaneously on my path 30 years ago. And my teacher at that time had 60 years in the game in his natural born life, and was like, what the, how is it that you instantly channel Latsu? And I mean, channeling to a degree is a visceral experience, and there's no in-betweens. So what happens is I do it with the eyes open. And when people experience a visceral channeling from me, people are like, oh, you're not even the same person. Of course, it's an admission of a frequency. Wow. When you feel it, it's like a laser beam that comes down from like Star Trek, and it permeates through your whole physical vehicle. And you can put a stick, most people put a stick out with a marshmallow and start cooking it because the transmission of the resonance is so high. Yeah. And so these types of things are more validation and realization of this very path, this Taoist seeking path. And of course, from your own admission, you're on this path. And I love the fact that you're very candid with your audience and the way you express that through your own journey. Most people would be like, yes, I'm enlightened. I found the path. I am. And, you know, and that's beautiful. But most people will fake it till they make it. Yeah. I'm a Pepsi challenge guy. Show me. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone. I want to see it. I want to experience what we're speaking of. And it's not just sort of a talking head propagated sort of, it becomes sort of, it's like it's on repeat. At a certain point, you would know, having the validator of your own experience, that you can smell the old proverbial doo-doo in a few seconds, having right. Someone going, oh my goodness, this is now my bullshit radar is at 100%. Yeah. And this is kind of like what happens in this whole experience. I sort of came out of nowhere about a year ago. I've been heavily involved in this stuff for decades. And it's like really watching these people. It's like, wow, okay. Yeah. I know. Oh, is this what's popular right now? Someone 30 years ago that would have come to me, which would have been a psychotic episode that would have been from my Taoist lineage, an exorcism, would now wake up today, say they're channeling the Palladians, open up a YouTube channel and get 100,000 followers. Great. But 30 years ago, that would be an issue. That would be on the precipice of something problematic. Right. Right. Yeah. I definitely resonate with everything that you're saying. And it's one of the challenges that I think I've had with my own journey. You know, for several years, I think my timing and the consistency of my own podcast, it put me without any. I haven't played the game the way you're supposed to, and I don't post about anything. I don't, I'll show me and my mom on Mother's Day, like, and yet it was my show is in the top 5 in spirituality for many years on Apple podcasts, and I think had I played the game more, I'd be in a different spot with my reach and things like that than now. And it's kind of like the wave sort of, I still have a lot of listeners and things, but there was a part of me that was like, just if everyone's going left, I want to go right. And, and it's just, I want to be really authentic. And I have what you said is true. I have been someone who, it's funny because I had a conversation, you touched on several things that are very prevalent, of course, in my journey now, talking with an old friend the other days, and I was sharing a channeling I had on a guest on my show last week. And I've had a lot of those sorts of things over the years. And honestly, 90% of the time, I'm just like, okay. Well, that wasn't, didn't floor me. And she really hit me with some stuff like, some pretty intense things and validations of, she's like talking to my guides and she's like, they're saying you're like a berry cobbler that's overcooked to some degree. And that was the last food I'd eaten was berry cobbler
that my mother made me on Father's Day, the night before. The last piece of food in my mouth was a berry cobbler, and she just went on to share, a lot of things that were really, really impactful. And, one of the things that talking to my really close friend about afterwards, he's like, Brandon, you've sought, I forget how you put it, but kind of those breadcrumbs of like the proverbial dragon, the mystical dragon. I've been like a little boy, kind of seeking and like, oh my gosh, my birthday synchronicity, it's mind blowing. It melts everyone's face when I tell them. And like, that sort of energy. And I've done a lot of that. Like, and he's like, you don't need to seek anymore. You don't need to even like, it's great. But, and then, in the last 2 weeks, I've set up an altar for the first time. One of the things I haven't ever done is really had a practice. I've just been kind of just do me, and so I'm really, hearing you talk about a practice and everything. And it's like, that's something that it's like, it's almost like a time for me to be more mature in my spirituality. And I've definitely been childlike in a lot of ways. And I think that, one of the only Bible verses that I will reference is, lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And so I think there's some real beauty and magic there too. And then there is a time for the prince or princess to become the king or queen, to come into their next matured state, if you will. And so that's really what I'm navigating in my own journey at this point. And as I teach best what I most need to learn, and I've learned a lot of lessons and I have a lot more to integrate. So I really admire someone like yourself who's had a very, hearing you just reference your practice and how it sounds like you've been a very disciplined person with that. And I think there's a lot of good there.
Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement. It's more, you remember. The Taoist path is to remember who you are, return to the truth. The only truth is your truth. And absolute truth is your truth and no other truth. And that will be realized by the seeker. That will go from first person, third person to no person. You cannot access any of this stuff unless you are in the present moment.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. And that's where energetic potential is critical. And so that's why yes, I'm biased. Yes, I'm a Taoist priest and I teach people all this esoteric internal alchemy, mystical methods. Where it comes Taoist magic, you name it, we're into it. But, when you start to do things that are what people consider superhuman, things start to change. So, for me, my first hit of the spiritual crack pipe was 30 years ago. The same time I channeled, that same week, I witnessed a physical healing that was beyond my wildest imagination, where, physical flesh going from gangrenous back to pink in color in 40 minutes. And that's a journey that I witness every day. I see physical healings all day long for 30 years, and it doesn't change. But you have to create a resonance. So what happens is in a electromagnetic spectrum, like a 3D, which is an altered state of perfection from a Taoist observation, because you are in what someone would consider a quantum model, a dimension, a realm. The 3D reality means that you're already stepped within the fourth dimension from a quantum model. So now you're looking at things as a fourth dimensional being subject to this space-time. And of course, you're one breath away from stepping into something that embodies all things, and that's that present moment. And then, of course, you can now obtain manifestation, magic, healing instantaneously, and it can be realized in a 3D reality. And so that comes down to light to wave to matter to particle. And then this attention intention cuts from the perfection, the cloth of perfection, which is the mother, this distorted reality that you're perceiving. And so from that distorted reality, you're now able to craft these different things that we call energy, because it's subject to that. And so that energy has a vibration. The vibration has a frequency. The frequency, if met with the same resonance, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. And this is where the methods are very, very, very important, in my opinion, because you end up going off on these tangents where you could potentially question your stability psychologically when you don't have evidence-based stuff and you're not surrounded by an environment that you're able to validate it for yourself. There's always degrees of this entry level, and it always starts as I said to you before, the 9 levels of development acquire a very sound foundational thing. And that's why the internal alchemy is so powerful from a Taoist perspective, is second to none.
Yeah.
And, people can possibly hold a candle to it. You may find some methods that are interesting through other esoteric practices, Rosicrucian, Hermetic, Kebetic. We could go down the rabbit hole of these things. I know for a fact what is actually repeatable because I teach it.
Yeah.
People travel from around the world to come and get a real dose of reality because you want to be able to repeat it. You want to be able to access this state, and that it doesn't become. And most of the time, people get these glimpses where I got a moment of mediumship, channeling, healing, spiritual enlightenment, and I've never seen it again. I've chased it for 20 years. I've never been able to obtain it because there is a way to regulate the energy centers. Yeah. And so from a Taoist seeker perspective, the first level of awareness is your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. Yeah. And people are like, well, that sounds like a hill that I've got to climb and it'll never end. Well, no, actually, that's the first one we get off the table. And you decipher it very quickly, where you are able to move your emotions like icons on a computer screen, and you're able to get down with what's necessary to stay in that present moment. And that's where a lot of people are like, well, this seems so difficult. Well, no, that's the construct of how you're perceiving your reality. Once you create the very deep nature of connection to this energetic realization, it's like taking candy from a baby. And people are like, how is that? Man, it's crazy. Well, just the charge that you're getting right now, the visceral validation is part of what we speak of when we talk about the bellows, because you are contracting and expanding all the time. You're all things at nothing. And you will get this validation, but most people don't know what to do with it. They're like, oh, okay, because I think with my head, I lead with my heart, I get a gut feeling. These are all problematic until otherwise noted, because you are not regulating the energy. And when you regulate the energy from a Taoist perspective, which is pretty fundamentally all sort of deeper energetic practices from Chinese medicine to Hindu yogic practices, you identify with the chakras, the energy centers. These are sort of these are the epicenters of my realization. Within Taoism, you have the emotion of virtue. Once you identify the emotion, you regulate it, and the virtue is revealed. And so through that, you become more concentrated. So your contracting and expanding becomes the center point where you enter the stillness. And that's through a mastery. So something that may have taken you, 30 years ago, it might have taken me an hour. It takes me less than a fraction of a second to obtain that same state. Yeah. And so it's like I call the Mr. Miyagi effect. And people are like, well, what is that? It's like, well, I'm teaching all these benign things that you think are absolutely nonsensical. And then I tell you to pull over on the side of the road in your Pinto. And they're like, well, what do you want me to pull over for? Well, you're driving your Pinto. Now get out of your Pinto, go to the hood, open the hood. There's a Lamborghini engine under there. Now let's get down with that, because you're not thinking. If you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And people get too caught up in the method. From one of my teachers that I channel directly, I have over 171 teachers I channel, and that's within the facet of perfection, right? We as Taoists call perfection the diamond, and every facet is another dialogue that you have with a higher state of awareness. And so ultimately the goal is to go from a dialogue to a monologue, to be the present moment, to be the now, is how you obtain this stuff. So this is sort of like where you get into it and you go, hang on a second, through these practices, when I accept things and be childlike and at face value, which you referred to, you are on the center point, but you're gravitating away from it, because as we repeat, when you're at your lowest, you're at your highest. Like, oh, no, I need to get my shit straight. I need to be more mature about my cultivation. You're right where you need to be. You just need to be able to, this substance that we call, because this goes beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. When I witness a healing manifestation magic, this is chi. This is life force. This is not a frequency or a hertz that is relevant to electromagnetic potential. So that turns into something of another world. Then now you're having this spiritual, supernatural thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's really fascinating, because I imagine a lot of listeners can relate to, and it's like a paradox. There's somewhere to go and yet nowhere to go, because you're right where you need to be. And yes, there is somewhere different that you can attain to and achieve. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just a natural progression. And for me, I have a lot of those spiritual breadcrumbs and synchronicity and serendipities. One of the things that you were talking about made me think of, like my initials are BBB. And it's like, as someone who's done a lot of do and, kind of moving things around and very enamored by the world, moving into that state of just being with the present, being present, right, with the gift of now. And that has been a big part of my journey as well, is how, cultivating more presence. And I definitely been able to do that, and yet there's still more room for improvement, and so yeah, it is. I think it's always helpful to remember that the journey is truly the goal, and as cliche as it sounds, that it's true. It's like, this moment is as divine as any other moment ever has been, could be, or will be, right? And our aim is to no matter what's happening, to bring that awareness back to it. I think instantly is tapping into a certain frequency and vibration that allows it to reveal itself in the highest.
Amen to that, brother. Because I mean, it really, right from the Jade Emperor, when you accept you know nothing, you know everything. And so this is problematic for most people. That's conceptual, as you put it. It's conceptual. Yeah. I read that book. I read Dispenza. I went to a retreat with some other guru, and this goes on and on and on. And I'm like, show me.
Yeah.
I'll be like, show me. Okay. So this is a conversation I always have with channelers and healers that I get on my podcast is, okay, so what would you define as the highest point of awareness for you that revealed this incredible knowing? I mean, I've had you may have had on your podcast, or you've heard of Tom Campbell from Monroe Institute. I'm not sure whether you've.
I haven't had him on, but I'm familiar.
Yeah, so Tom and I are dear friends. I've been on his podcast. He's been on mine. I'm going back on again, and we end up having conversations that are like, oops, it's 3.5 hours. We both have wives. We better stop.
Yeah,
because there's an understanding, and when you get to it, I've been I've not been marching to the beat of the drum of social media, and even 12 months into this, I create material that will raise someone's spiritual consciousness. And the longest podcast I ever had was 7.5 hours.
Wow.
And if you believe you're limited or you're physical, you are human, that is not potential. That's not possible. You need to realize you are abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And to obtain that, you do not source. So most of the people that pursue this stuff are coming from, backgrounds, attorneys, doctors, light workers, Reiki masters, energy healers, Chinese medicine doctors, chiropractors, whatever. And they're like, the end result is the red flag. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted. Okay. Well, first and foremost, as a Taoist seeker, you identify and access the 50 trillion cells within this physical flesh, and you become the maestro, the basically conductor, to obtain that potential, that 0.07 millivolts of electricity The potential is how you are able to saturate the physical flesh. And for Taoists, it's immortality, right? So we want to lengthen this incarnation as much as possible so we can obtain a conscious, a spiritual consciousness that will level up in the next re-up. And so that alchemy component is so precious to us. Whereas, you might get an Eastern philosophy, as you mentioned, metaphysics, where Buddhists, first of all, don't believe in God. And second of all, they're not so big on the old energetic potential. They sort of go their path to find the dukkha, distort it, and stay still. Whereas a Taoist is deep into the alchemy. We want to stretch this physical flesh. Eastern philosophy, it's an avatar, toss it away, move right along. We're coming back. We're coming back bigger and badder. Yet Taoists nurture that. And it's really critical because you come in with this potential, Jing, life force. And I've never seen anyone come in at 100%. They normally come in around 80. And I identify as an analogy of a battery pack. So you come in at 80%, then we teach you the alchemy. You level that battery up to 100. You go from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000, being the highest point for a Taoist within any sort of like reference of any sort of numerology. The highest point is 9. What a coincidence. What does it take? What amount of time does it take to create human life from conception to birth? Oh, 9 months. Oh, it's like a revelation. People are like, whoa. And then, you get right down to polymath gurus that would decipher the angles of a pyramid. And listen, we've been using pyramids as a reflection of the constellations for thousands of years with in Taoist magic and star stepping rituals that we use to cultivate and concentrate that energy that comes in the form of what we call human body dowsing. So you can identify power centers, ley lines, all these types of things because they're energetic profile. And so once you get into that, it's so strange when you said, oh, I'm at this part where I really want to, I've got an altar. Always remember your consciousness is speaking to you. There are no coincidences that we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Now it's like, hang on, whoa, this is kind of interesting that you kind of come to this point. And, it happens to many. And when you start to be able to be self-evident. Now, I had an old school, mystical teacher by the name of David Verdesi on my channel. I'm going to publish that. He and I have experienced things from similar masters that travel around the world that have,
I had him on the podcast years ago, I think.
Right. So, I've trained with people that do supernatural things. For me, physical healing is the pinnacle. I want to see it. As opposed to, can I get deeper into transmuting and separating electric from magnetic and have you stand on a wet rag and zap you with the charge that I cultivate from my lower dantian? Sure. But these are circus tricks. They don't get to a point of what is that going to obtain to contribute to the conscious collective. Right. So, obtaining these levels of supernatural states give you a glimpse and you get trained in it, but you go beyond it. For me, it's never really exciting about. I teach people, martial arts, qigong, bagua, all that type of stuff, tai chi, but it doesn't excite me. The idea of witnessing a raising of consciousness is, for me, that's a moment of excitement for me personally. But, teaching these methods is part of the processes. And, you always get that, oh, my goodness. And so for Tom and I, we have this conversation. A lot of people come to me and go, you're that guy. I got this conversation. My grandmother is in a coma. She's going to die. The doctor told me. I said, no. And they're like, what are you, you're the guy. Yeah. And so I had this conversation with Tom, and the charge you got is another validator, is when you get this idea and you, from his perspective, he calls it the largest consciousness system, and you're altering that with your attention, intention, creating a different probability because you are this present moment. And so this happens to me quite often. And next minute they get up the next day out of a coma and the doctor says, how is that possible? Because it's all got to do with the potential and how much you can cultivate and basically change the probability of that with your attention intention. And that comes from the substance. It doesn't come from a fleeting moment where I had this. No, you want to repeat it. You want it to be something where, oh my God, this is my path. And you've come across light workers, healers, channelers, all that kind of stuff. There is a very clear presence that takes place. And that's your potential, realizing that. But you can also live in that 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And you can bathe in that and have it enhance your journey as a seeker.
Mm-hmm.
And nurture that physical flesh that you have, because when you remind the man mortality is real, this fleeting moment, most people within Taoists, we have documented Taoists that have lived 200-300 years within the canons, especially within Yellow Emperor. But celestial immortals, physical flesh, 110 years, that's very doable. And what happens is you get caught up in the construct. The limitation of what your potential is if you want to identify as this human flesh before you.
Right.
And so it's conceptual for most until it's not. But you must have that presence. And that's where you start to validate it. And it's like, okay, the serendipities, the synchronicities, they are like, holy crap. The parking ferry, I always let people wet their whistle with the parking ferry. It's like, do you know what the parking ferry is? Right? It's
manifesting your parking spot.
Right. Just the simplicity of that, because you're not you're embodying the present moment, but that comes down to a physical healing, a mental, emotional healing is the same thing. Only, unfortunately, people separate themselves and they get caught up in, well, I want to be the Messiah. I want to be the next coming of Jesus. I want to be the healer. And you cannot obtain the present moment if you are a place, person, or thing. It will not happen. I'll just heads up for anyone that wants a spoiler alert. You want to completely embody the now, which is first person, third person, no person. There is no title, and that's where things like The Secret become problematic. And people are like, well, what do you mean? Well, there's so many people that were disappointed by that incredible movement because it offered potential. But the reason that people fell short was one of the fundamental questions they asked you was, what is your value system? Well, then you're always going to be in the ego. You're always going to be in the construct that this is about you. And to obtain manifestation, magic, healing, it's about the now. You're not asking if you are the now, you're not going, hey, universe, can you please help me out? Or I am that present moment, but I am. You're not I am. You're nothing. You're everything at once. But that energetic potential has to be realized before anything else. It's just this, and it goes on and on and on and on, which you understand. And so you're right on the precipice of your next level up, my dear friend.
Oh, well, thank you for saying so and acknowledging that. And yeah, it's like Ram Dass said, it's the journey to becoming nobody. Right. And so I think, it's a really interesting juxtaposition of, I want, this spiritual narcissistic streak that I think it's like stopping off on the waypoint of I am the one is like, it's a waypoint in everyone's journey. Like, oh my gosh, I am it. Yes, you are. And so is everyone else. So relax. And therefore, like you said, it's simultaneously everything and nothing. And really what I'm hearing from you is like, the more you can identify with, or as the channel said to me last week, the void, the nothing, that's where you're going to really access the next level of your potential, and not in the more of my spiritual ego being, pet by followers or likes or, numbers and all that BS.
Well, yeah, and it's a show me moment. That's the self-realization, the self-evident moment is being able to. So what I like to entry level is bending metal is a great way to get a taste, right? So you find that tactile resistance of the metal on the human flesh, and with your attention intention, using the cultivational practices we have, we don't just use the third eye or the physical eyes. We use 9 eyes to project that energy through this vehicle, this dantian, the energy field, which is the upper dantian. And so when you put your intention into anything, and you are the now, that metal with a little tactile resistance giving you sort of like this separation and then this connection, all of a sudden it bends like it just melts like butter. And then you go to the next graduation, which is taking a spoon and melting it like a candle, or finally taking a fork and moving the prongs in either direction using your intention. But that happens in the present moment. I've had many remote viewers. I have a huge collection of channelers and remote viewers that I've just become really close with from this life and remembering past lives. And when you see a physical healing, it's like a transmutation. It wiggles and contorts and resets. Wiggles, contorts, and resets. So with your naked eye, you're looking at something that you would think you're hallucinating, but the evidence will be the return back. Like if it's a physical gash, a tumor, a bone broken, whatever, the evidence will be there. It's like, hang on, that just returned back to its original state. It was broken, now it's set, it's returned to original state. I've witnessed this so many times. It's like you can't make this stuff up. It's like, but the validation is when you get in a group of people and you share this stuff, and unless you've experienced it, it's beyond someone's wildest imagination. So they're conceptual, but it's also like, how do you enter that? You must enter it at a certain level. This is obtainable by anyone and everyone. So I want people to understand this is not something where your spiritual gifts, this reincarnation is this, and you're going to be good at this and not at that.
Yeah.
Once you cultivate a method, anything is obtainable. Now, bending metal is exciting to a certain degree, but you just enter levels of awareness, but it's no different than a physical healing. And that's why I like to get people, if you've experienced that sort of level of other sensory perception, and you get into psychokinesis, telekinesis, all these kind of things, they're exciting because they're what you call in a category of mystical, appearances to you as something that's not what you would validate as within this realm. And so that
you're treating it as if it's not the standard.
It's and that's always exciting. And I've never, in all these years, I never ever don't spend a second waking up being excited as I was the first time I witnessed this stuff. And when you get people aligned, they go, "Holy crap! How did that was possible?" They're like, "I healed myself. I healed my dog. I did this. I did that." Because you're aligned, you're attuned to this, and it becomes this present moment. And they get so overwhelmed by the fact that they're now there that then they sort of, there's a general, as you put it very clearly, there's a general moment of, holy shit, I realized this present moment. And then they go, I did this, and then they go back a few steps, and then they get back to the center, and then they move forward. And there's a moment of, holy crap, this is so unreal. I have to take a minute to digest this because it's just, I just kept looking at the movies and reading the books, and I've done 1,000 different ways to Sunday, from reading the Dharma to the Tao Te Ching to the Bible to whatever. And it was so unreal that I'm going to take a minute. And it does. It gets people to step back a little bit. But the more you repeat it and you develop and cultivate those skills, you remember. That's the whole point, is remembering who you are. This is like, I always make people very aware. I don't claim to know anything. I know nothing. Lao-Tzu is my teacher that I connect with on a second-by-second basis. And if I have anything to say, it's not, I'm as dumb as rocks. If I have a moment where I would seem sort of like there's a level of mastery, it's not from this physical body. It's just a remembering of who I am. And it comes in the form of the information. So, this is the light, this is the information, and the lower dantian is the energy. And that's why the alchemy is so powerful, is you move these things around, and then, holy crap, you are having this magical, mystical, esoteric moment where this is not a Harry Potter movie. This is my life.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I can't make this stuff up. But it's about realizing now.
Yeah.
And so you have to entry. There's always an entry level. There must be an entry level to that development rather than just going, oh, I feel energy. And this is where I get a lot of, I feel energy and I'm channeling and I'm like, okay, I think that's amazing. And I can identify with that and I can give you examples. And then you reconfirm it with yourself. Now I need you to be able to clearly see the energy. And they're like, well, what does that matter? I thought that wasn't my gift. I'm just feeling it. I'm like, I need you to understand that all your gifts are everything and nothing at the same time. So if you're a zodiac sign, you're all zodiac signs. You're everything. So every day is the perfect day. When someone asks me, how are you doing today? I'm like, it's good to be me.
Yeah.
Because it's now. And so when you are able to enter that, all of a sudden you can see the properties and the very difference between all the energetic profiles. If you don't understand or see those, it's like turning out a light and handing you what you think is Play-Doh. And you're playing with it. It's like, oh, I'm playing with this Play-Doh. And I turn the light on and it's dog shit. And you're like, hang on a second. I thought it was Play-Doh. And this is where people get caught up and they start draining their life force. And if they're coming from a dualistic perspective of there is this polarizing effect of energy and magnetism and the electric-magnetic components of this realm, until you enter the oneness, the present moment, you will be subject to that. And that, of course, is referencing the humanistic human condition, which is the emotional content. And you should never erase your emotional content. You should always be like, I have a personality. I always tell people, I like chocolate. I like driving my side by side in the desert at 100 miles an hour at 115 degrees. I enjoy Netflix, but I can also enter this now and show you something that is what you consider superhuman when it's not a place, person, or thing. And so that playing with the doo-doo is problematic for a lot of people. And I get a lot of really energetically sensitive channels and healers that end up on my doorstep going, I feel like I'm being leeched.
Yeah.
Well, because you have a construct, back in the day, remember your reality, you're the, as we put it, master keeper creator of your reality. And so now you're subject to all these other things. If you believe in duality, if you believe in good and bad, up and down, heaven and hell, which Taoists do not. Taoism is yin and yang. There is zero profile of what we would call a good and evil perspective. But you have to understand this before you start, permeating the very limited path that you have through that heaven and hell component. And when you turn into the one, all that stuff is, quite frankly, you're not subject to it anymore, but you have to cultivate it.
Yeah. Right. It really takes learning how to focus your energy, right, is like such a fundamental thing, I feel. And it's and it's easy to scatter your energy with so many things to, exciting things to marvel at, and distractions. I mean, so our energy is attention is constantly being, they're vying for it everywhere you turn, right? And so finding some level of focus, it appears, is a path to really tapping into the power of the present, right?
If you say so. There you get to that moment. It's like having to know that is to know nothing, right? And that's where people go, Taoism is such a head screw. Well, not really. When you understand that it's now and that you can be all things and nothing at the same time, it's the energetics. You start walking and then you start running. And all I always suggest to anybody who's a seeker is to cultivate a method that is repeatable from an energetic profile position. And then you can really start to, as we would put it, self-evident realization of the channeling of that attention intention. Because when people say that, it's like, okay, No, you want to feel it. Like it's like a laser beam that is transmitted from this physical flesh that you will be like, holy crap. Like I put my intention to something and it materialized within this 3D reality because I was just a present moment. It becomes so dense, the substance, right?
Yeah. It's creating the right conditions for the acorn to become the oak tree, right? If it's put, the little boy picks it up from the riverside and puts it on his shelf, it's going to remain an acorn. If it gets the right light, water, temperature conditions, it's going to naturally realize its potential, right?
And 100%. I mean, it becomes realized.
Yeah.
When you do simple things like validating, like the psychic potential that you were enamored by within the last channel that you had, because she was able to tap into your very thoughts.
Mhm.
This is self-realized validation.
Yep.
And that's why I like, entry level, what I call psychic drive-by black op readings. And people are like, whoa, what does that even mean? It's like, well, I could meet anyone and give them their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state inside of 30 seconds by reading their energy. I'm not immersed in it. I'm not looking for you to validate that I'm the next coming of Jesus, or I'm psychic clairvoyant 101, the magic of the magic. The information is present. Once you turn these sensory perceptions on, the information just sits there. So from a Taoist perspective, we just read the energy centers, and there's 9 that start between you, the earth, and the universe. And those 9, once regulated, give you a really interesting viewpoint of reality. But you're able to see the evidence by being able to describe someone's mental, emotional state. And I always tell people, because I'm out here in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and sometimes I go down on the strip with my kids and we have family street magic day. I've got kids between 12 and 6 months old. I've got 6 of them. The last 5 have learned the very fundamentals. Basically, there should be an entry level of understanding the separation of conscious and unconscious. Things like hypnosis is always fun, these simple things. And so you get on the strip and you get people to realize that present moment can be altered instantaneously. But I always ask people, hey, would you like a psychic reading? They're like, sure. Yeah. And I start at the bottom first because it's most important. If I start at earth and then I enter what someone would consider a Hindu practice, the root chakra, I give them an out by the time I get to their sexual energy. And because I start on the sexual energy, and they're like, whoa. This shit is real. I'm like, yeah, can we go deeper? No, I'm good. I was only kidding. And people have buyer's remorse when they enter this path because I read it like a menu. I'm not like going, oh, and your angels go. Now I can do the auric field summary and give you an insight as to your guides, your guardians, your angels, all this kind of stuff, and what's shape-shifting within you in this present moment, what's really guiding you. But just a simple auric reading becomes problematic for people because they do get an out and they're like, hang on a second, this guy's reading it off like a menu. I'm not looking for your approval. It's information. And that's where people, and that's that part where it's the now moment that people get all, holy crap. Yeah. And everyone has the ability to access this sensory perception. You just got to cultivate it.
Yeah. Right. I'm curious with your auric readings, how does the information present itself to you? Is it
It just I'll look at any part of you. What happens is instantly I see an aura, and every part of you, every organ, every energy center gives me the excess and deficiency of that organ. So I will look at the fundamentals of your 5 vital organs that we call the entry to the 5 elements that are the 81 elements that exist within your physical flesh. And those 5 elements are liver, lungs, kidney, spleen, and which one did I miss? Liver, lungs, kidney, spleen, and heart. And so I just go through and which is going to be more problematic, which is deficient, which is excess. And from that gives me the emotional content versus the virtue. And the more you regulate that, the quicker the emotions align with the virtue. And bingo, you're off to the races. but it will show you, and I've had people that have literally gone, wow, you need to stop this right now. I'm like, all I did was asked you and you said yes, but like now you're getting into information that I don't really want revealed. Like it's like, and you always see that, right, from the first energy center. People are protecting their parameters, as are many people. You're sort of on the precipice of going either way, and that's part of your personality. But we could go there, but I always remember that, and I stopped because one of the first times I got a reading, starting this stuff decades ago, it gives me the evidence of your physical timeline and things of that nature, and I really stopped my teacher Latsu, and I said, why did you let me do that? Because I presented a timeline to an individual the first time I did it, and they died to the second. And I was like, this is like 2 months later, they died to the second. And I was like, that was not cool. Why did you do that? Like, aren't we supposed to be healing people and enlightening people? And it's like, this is part of anything and everything happens at once. So the ability to change that is potential. That means it's the present moment. That means that what happens is, and I've never done it again. Even though the information is revealed to me, I don't share it with people because their potential to be all things and nothing at the same time is the same as mine. And you can change that pathway like that.
Yeah.
And so, but you could also go in the mindset of someone that might take it from a psychological hypnotherapist sort of limited perspective and go, your suggestibility was enough for them to take the nocebo placebo, and now they're down the route of holy crap, that was their self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
So when people give readings, I generally give people 9 lives leading up to their current one. So 9 past lives, and it gives them a great insight into who they are.
Wow.
And then we go from there, and the timeline is unlimited. And that's really how it's important that people get an insight. That's what they're curious about. That's part of the human condition, right? What we call a hetero action from a therapist perspective. What you start, you must finish. That's exactly how humans perceive things. So when you start giving them more substance, they become one with the present moment.
Yeah.
And so they're like, whoa. And like just the epiphany you had with the channeler. It's like, whoa. I mean, that was literally the last thing that I ate. That's the beauty of it. And so I like to give people I like to give people the present moment. Excuse me. Little energy there. Okay. That's always an interesting one. That energy center reveals a lot. So this is very important for your own journey, is to put those little pieces together, because that's how you start.
Yeah.
And you get beyond it. But, I always remember, you don't dismiss other people's belief system, you dismiss your own. Yeah. So there's a million ways up the mountain, and I like to help people remember who they are. And that's what the be all or end all of it is. And when you realize that you remember who you are, you become selfless. Yeah. And then you servitude is like part of this realization of being an ambassador to planet Earth. Yeah. And so what's happening within this micro of macro, within your physical flesh to the Earth itself, is happening throughout the universe. This is going on everywhere. Yeah. And so when people get all caught up in, I'm human, oh my goodness, what's happening to planet Earth? It's all going to be death and destruction, brimstone, fire falling out of the sky. I remember at the beginning of this year, everyone was coming to Latsu going, okay, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And normally I just speak on it, but when I channel him, he came out with this quite simple evidence. It's like, imagine you're like a grain of sand. Asking the beach, what are we doing today? Fall back into the beach and be realized. And I was just like, I can't make this stuff up. And this is, these are the insightful nuggets that take place with this level of consciousness and tapping into that now moment of information.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just finished transcribing the 2024 version of the Tao Te Ching with Lao-Tzu. And that's basically what a Taoist calls the magical register. So every verse is an incantation. That incantation has 81 levels of consciousness that you develop through that incantation. And there's a frequency, a color, and a shape that goes with each experience. So it's a visceral experience. It's not just, oh, I just read a coffee table book, the Tao Te Ching. It was like, took me about 30 minutes. Oh, no.
Yeah. Right.
There is a visceral, kinesthetic realization.
Right. Wow. So you did a interpretation, a modernized interpretation. Is
Yeah, just a translation. It's in English and Mandarin and Pinyin. So we also use the tone to sing, and the somatic response of that is a vehicle to instant manifestation, magic healing.
Cool. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. Is that something that you're planning to release in the coming year or so? Or?
Yeah. I've actually, it's available through my social media. You can find it on Instagram. You just go to the link tree, click on it. And that's always a good foundational basis to start with. And then, of course, I developed a digital offering, which basically levels someone up. It's the Way 126. And so basically it's a visual audible experience, creating a visceral kinesthetic response that is your validator. And so you develop these skills over a period of the first 9 weeks. I always tell people, you could do this for 9 weeks and be realized. You could be the janitor of McDonald's or the next coming of Dalai Lama. You master your emotions, it's yours forever. And so it's not something where, you know, you do something and you put in all this time and you're like, well, like through your own admission, you're like, I had this moment and then I went back to my reality, what I perceive as my reality, and I was blissful. And then someone told me that this, that, and something else, and I shit the bed and I'm all emotional and I'm angry and it's controlling me. What happens is, for me, is helping you realize that you can measure your response and your results on a daily basis. Never invest in a spiritual practice that cannot be measured, and you should be able to measure it. And so I give people exercises to measure their access. You know, I have people that are like accountants, doctors, whatever. They're like, holy crap, nothing bothers me anymore. I'm like, you're welcome. You know, that's part of getting into that now moment and realizing you can move your emotions like icons on a computer screen.
Right.
And when you do that, and that's the pulpability, the properties, the profile, the energetic potential must be realized by the seeker, or it's just talking head nonsense. I'm just going to be honest. And they're like, Shifu, you're a priest, and you said nonsense. I'm like, yeah, that's all right. I can have a personality and not be subject to anything when I access the now. So this is a multifaceted multitasking of the now. Means you operate in a quantum model of all realms at once, all dimensions at once. And that's part of it. And that's a new definition of multitasking that most people are not.
Right.
But
Well, it's experiencing your humanity through a very different lens, right?
Oh, 1000%. And, you know, out-of-body experience is a good entry level, near-death experience, sleep paralysis. These they identify as your consciousness is giving you a seed of curiosity to look for more. What does that mean? Yeah. This was conceptual. Now I've experienced it once. I want to repeat it.
Yeah. Right.
And that repeatable experience will come in that form. So a lot of people tend to feel like they need to go to a sleep paralysis state to obtain out-of-body experience. Well, that's depends on the individual seeker. It's not necessary by any stretch of the imagination. As you cultivate, it's very easy to exit and obtain that state of awareness and be now.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Fascinating work that you've done. I'd love to have you on Positive Head sometime to share.
I would love to. It's always it's a whirlwind of interesting culminations of things as you become more aware. And most people are like, where have you been? I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been here. It's like I'm not looking to sell a cult like
Hmm.
process.
Right.
I'm here to
Right.
help people. What I do want to do is help millions of people,
Yeah.
and that is help people to remember who they are,
Yeah.
and that comes in that form. And
Hmm.
so, a lot of this stuff ends with a retreat over the weekend, and you return back to your natural born life.
Yeah.
Things become problematic and painful and limited, and that is an option. It you can be the present moment, but you do not have to be in the pain and suffering that is the human condition that is limited by that. And again, is the glass half empty or full? Are you contracting or expanding? What are you aware of at this moment? Because you're all things at once.
Right.
What's your attention focused on, as you
Right.
would put it?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. Well, this is I'm assuming you're at the end of your tenure here right now. I think or where
Oh, time wise?
yeah.
Oh,
You're good? Or you still got more time?
yeah, we still got I could yeah, I've still got w- yeah, I could still another
Yeah.
15 minutes or so should be
Yeah.
fine.
Perfect. Perfect. And so, when we get into this stuff, your journey becomes realized when you're able to repeat this and enjoy it and experience it. And it's not just a fleeting, transitory moment, which is just,
Right. Right.
you know, and
Yeah, in
and
my case it's like, I'll have a lot pop up very consistently. Um and it and not having necessarily developed the um, techniques perhaps to make it to have more control over it. It's like always just popping around me, and then so that's why it's intriguing to me. You know, uh, the idea of some sort of a practice and a practice that really resonates too. So I'd be curious to even learn more about what that entails.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
you know, it's
I would love to share it with you. It's important for everyone to fortify the energetic potential.
mhm,
It's as dense as this physical flesh, and
mhm,
once you activate it,
mhm,
most people tend to refer to Kundalini experiences. And I
mhm,
quite frankly, having been immersed in this for so many decades, I would have to possibly, explore more what someone defines as a Kundalini experience. When you develop skills like that, you are able to repeat techniques that are more self-evident. Now, are they wonderment things that I definitely get fuzzy about? No, but things like levitation and stopping your heart, things of that nature, that's easily obtainable. But what does that mean? That's normally someone taking that path and having a very deep cultivational practice to obtain that. And it takes a mastery. And so when people have energetic awakenings, I like to put it in that category. Now let's get it repeatable, because fear is nothing more than a construct of the human condition. So when someone tells you that, oh my goodness, you need to abstain from sex and you need to eat a leaf for 90 days and you need to sing Kumbaya, hop on one foot and call in your angels, that is a manipulated realm of man perception of basically a cult like state to continually have you in question of what is.
mhm.
And so, this abstaining from sexual practice is, I'm going to be honest with you, nonsense, because a lot of people refer to it within Eastern practices. But when you realize you are not of this body, what can
Mhm,
harm you?
mhm,
Nothing. And
right.
so when you understand that that's a flat out lie, and you're able to identify with the energetic potential and you can repeat it, all of a sudden now when you access these things, you're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. Most men, when they climax, they become exhausted and they pass out, they fall asleep. This is a cycle of the most response within a sexual practice, and they're very resistant to it because it's like, oh my goodness, I just lost part of my essence. And I teach them a very simple technique, and they go into the center of it. And when they climax, they become even more energized than they were before they even had sex. And then they're like, hang on a second, what? I was supposed to get all tired, and that's evidence that I've lost part of my life force. And I'm like, no, everything is energy, frequency, vibration. And so you have just basically cultivated a moment of expansion.
Right.
And then you absorb that, because this is what we, within a Taoist path, we call it absorbing the riches. You absorb that and you become even more heightened. You don't become less. And that's part of the energetic potential. And so instead of getting exhausted and tired, and that's through the admission of most men, and they abstain from sex because their spiritual teacher told them they're leeching their potential, their jing, their constitution. This is straight up, propagated lies.
Yeah, intuitively, I've always felt that way as well. It's never felt like I don't feel depressed or depleted afterwards. I'm pretty elated and like, it doesn't. I don't. Yeah, hasn't been my experience, and that's the type of thing for me. I always just like, what is my experience? That's
Yes.
as opposed to, being sold a bill of goods, right?
Right. And that's that self-evident realization of knowing. And so, you have that epiphany just from hearing it from me going, okay, well, he just reconfirmed what I knew intuitively.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
It's like, hang on a second, this guy teaches Taoist alchemy, and he just reconfirmed what I've known for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. You're remembering. But
Yeah.
then people get trapped in this human condition, and they're looking for a validation. And that's where Taoism and Gnosticism become so paralleled. The brother, the sister, the brother, the contraction, the expansion, because it's about self-realization. It's not about you obtaining it. I give you the methods, but you always want to obtain it from your monologue as the mother. The dialogue is always a beautiful way to enter the monologue. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, a lot of people, and karma is also another thing that people tend to trap people in, the karmic model of understanding. From an Eastern philosophy, metaphysical sort of like realization, you're reaping what you sow. That there should be an indicator you need to stop. If you're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite, what exactly is limited, or what is exhausted? That's where people are like, oh, Jufu, I get the whole bellows thing now. Yes, it's always happening. Contracting and expanding is happening. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And when you access the present moment.
Yeah. It's like, what part of all of that do you want to focus on and cultivate and experience? So where does you being subjected to something fit into that model? It doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't exist. So then you go back to, hang on, I'm literally participating in a spiritual psyop. Yes, you are. You're feeding a certain sort of method, and this is where people get these Hollywood guru versions of things, and then they go down that path instead of cultivating a very palpable substance that you can identify with, and the skill set is developed so you equally are able to obtain all these sensory perceptions, which is the blanket that I put all this stuff under. I don't go, oh, I teach you clairvoyance. No, that's part of the Taoist journey. You learn all of this stuff. You remember all of this stuff because it's all available to you. It's not like, oh, I'm a psychic and I think I'm a healer. I'm a this, I'm a that. You're all and nothing at the same time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fascinating. Very fascinating stuff. And like I said, I'm curious to learn more about, you know, your path and how you recommend one to navigate it.
Yeah,
It's intriguing.
yeah, absolutely. I'm always here. It's like it happens a lot with a lot of the gurus that I have on my channel. They get on and they're like, "Oh, I didn't really know who I was talking to," and then
Hmm.
they go, "Oh, hang on a second," and then next minute they're like, "Could you give me a little help on this or that?" And I'm like, "We're here. I am you. You are me.
Yeah.
This is about expansion. This is not about this veil that you need to limit by. This is what is the problem with the spiritual community, in my opinion, that I've
Hmm.
noticed over the last 12 months is they want to withhold, they want to control, they want to be the next coming of Jesus
Hmm.
instead of if you are in service. And this is an incantation that the Jade Emperor always uses is very powerful. A power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. And that visceral experience you're having is a validation. But moreover, it's tapping into an understanding that when you're in service to others, you're in service to yourself. And then all of a sudden, people are like, well, I'm into that, Jafu. I wanted to do the whole energetic thing, but now I understand the selflessness,
Yeah.
the service that comes, the servitude that comes with this is your gift, is your offering.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
will be continued, just like the bellows, contracting and expansion is this very moment.
Yeah. It's like, I think it was Lao Tzu that said, "Why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them, therefore it is king of 100 streams." And you just, it's self-evident when you really think about it. Like, you know, or Gandhi, like, you know, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. Well, why does that hold true? Because there are no others. You know, and so once that really sets in, that becomes, you know, someone who doesn't know what should I do next? What is my life purpose? All I can tell you is this: the highest expression will involve service in some way, shape, or form for these very reasons and principles, right? It is in it is in giving that you can actually receive. It is the way it's structured.
And that is the beautiful epiphany of the now.
Hmm.
And then when you obtain it and you repeat it, it becomes that Marty, 88 miles per hour,
Hmm.
that entry level.
Yeah.
And then you start to create this actual pathway that you can access this through this energetic potential,
Yeah.
and it becomes repeatable as it
Yeah.
should be. You're not giving this physical flesh for no reason. It's a tuning fork to your realization. So even if you're out of your body, you are registering this as an experience. As the secret ingredients from a Taoist is everything is a thought, feeling, and an emotion. That's it. That's the
Hmm.
sum of everything. And when you are able to realize that, you can then remove the emotion and the feeling from that now moment, and you can reference it as wisdom. You can recall it without it controlling your state. And
Hmm.
that's part of that development. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, just looking at the time here, I have 3 minutes a call that starts, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and um, yeah, I would love to, like I said, have you on Positive Head sometime. We can go
Yeah.
deeper.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that, my dear friend. And I will put all your social media under this podcast. I want to ask one last question.
Sure.
What is your definition of consciousness?
What is the definition of consciousness?
Your definition.
My definition of consciousness. Um, Awareness is the
Mm.
word that comes to mind. You know, I think it was Eckhart Tolle that said, um, he talked about, we're here and we think that the world is here to make us happy, and that we're somehow being gypped in that process. Like, okay, the aim is to be happy, and I'm getting shortchanged. That's what the world's here to do, and it isn't working as well for me as it should be. And it's this huge misconception. It's like the world isn't here to make you happy. The world is here to make you conscious. So all the design is to make you more aware, in my opinion, of who and what, remembering who and what you actually are. And so that is my answer.
That is beautiful. I've done hundreds of these podcasts. I've never heard the same answer. And I love it because that's what it is. And I want to thank you, my dear friend. I'm going to bring people to your podcast. I want my students, the OGs of the channel, 126 Experience, to go out and dive deeper into Brandon's offerings.
Thank you.
And get deeper into his seeking, and he's very masterful at extracting information from people in such a beautiful setting. And it's very, very, it's easy. It's easy on the ears, on the eyes. And that's part of that mastery that you've acquired for the now moment. And it really is a superpower. And I love that offering that you share with the world. So I want to thank you, my dear friend, for sharing.
Thank you for that reflection. And that was a beautiful reflection. And, I definitely feel a kinship, and there's a lot more to unpack here. And so I look forward to having the opportunity and getting the opportunity to do that. And let's make sure we schedule something.
Yeah, I would love that. After this, I'll send you an email with my cell phone. We'll stay in contact. And from your own admission, you're not far away. I have a Taoist temple out here. If you ever get out here, I'd love you to come to that. And we'll connect and get that podcast set up and go further on all this other stuff.
Really maybe even you can come out to, we're doing regular gatherings here, and I don't know if you come to LA very often, but conscious community gatherings, where we'll have a featured guest each time, and they give a little talk, and it's a beautiful community here that we sort of are, I guess, a lighthouse or anchor for, here at the Mystic Manor, the event, co-living event space that I hold down. So I would like that as well. That would be super cool.
I love that. I love that, my dear friend. So I want to thank you for sharing your time with me today.
Yeah, likewise. I just realized it's 10:01, so I should jump. Someone's waiting for me on another call, and thank you so much. I'll look for that email, and let's continue the dialogue.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Thank you. I want to thank the universe for sharing. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, also, it just occurred to me, I did write a book a few years ago, and I would love to just gift that too, if that's okay. Yeah. If people go to goldenkey.gift and use the code LOVE at checkout, they can get the audio or ebook. And so I share a lot of fun stories and, insights and thoughts on the ultimate nature of reality. So
I love it. I want everyone to go out and take advantage of that incredible selfless offer. And I want to thank you, my dear friend. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. Likewise. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.
Till next time, journey well.